The Dark Crystal begins 1,000 years ago on the planet Ra, but when the powerful crystal cracked, thus begins the Age of Chaos and the birth of the two new races, the Malevolent Skeksis and the Wise Mystics. For 1,000 years, the Malevolent Skeksis have relied on the Dark Crystal to ravage the entire land, maintain control, and further enhance their lives. The Wise Mystics, on the other hand, have been living in the Valley of the Stones far enough away from the castle, and they are waiting on the one who could save the world. For 1,000 years, they remained as gentle and as peaceful as they could be. But unfortunately, now that the years had gone by, both the Mystics and the Skeksis are about to lose their leaders. Jin, who is said to be the last of the Gelflings, and for 1,000 years the malevolent Skeksis had wiped out his entire family, but yet he managed to survive the attack. The leader of the Mystics, that is said to be the wisest of them all, had raised Jin ever since when he was a child, and now he's about to get the bad news. His master is going to die. So back with Jin, he rushes over to the valley to meet up with his master that lives in his house. So by the time he arrives at his master's house, that's when Jin found out from his master that there's a crystal shard that was missing, and according to what he said, that it was Argur who has this such a shard that could insert the dark crystal, and that way, according to what the prophecy suggests, that if Jin can insert the missing shard before the three suns meet, then the world would be saved. But if not, then this could mean the bad news and the end of the world. So meanwhile in the castle, the Skeksis are about to lose their leader too, and he is said to be the most ruler of them all. But then within minutes, the Skeksis leader, which is the Emperor, dies. Back in the valley, the leader of the Mystics is also dead. So now it's up to Jin to find the missing shard that Agra has, so he heads off to Agra's house. So meanwhile, back in the castle, it is now time for the malevolent Skeksis to choose a new emperor because their old one is gone. So Chamberlain had made his case that he should be the ruler, but the general thought about it otherwise. So when the Chamberlain was about to take a scepter, but the general wouldn't allow it. So what the general did is that he challenged the Chamberlain to a combat known as the trial by stone. So one at a time, both the general and the chamberlain each took their turn of chopping off the top of the stone. But unfortunately, when the general won the trial by stone combat, as for the chamberlain, he was forced to be banished from the castle forever. So after the general was declared a new emperor, the Dark Crystal had told the malevolent Skeksis that Jin is heading to Aragra's house. So there's only one thing left for the new emperor to do: send the Garthim out to get him. So that's what they did. So meanwhile back with Jin, he's still on his way to Agra's house. But unfortunately on the way there, he was caught in a net. Then Agra shows up to ask Jin what he had wanted. So Jin confessed that he needed a crystal shard that was missing so that he could save the world. So finally, after Agra was convinced otherwise, she released Jin, and then Jin follows her to her place. So back with Jin, who's inside Agra's house, and he has never seen a room quite like it before. It has all the laboratory stuff, books, and of course what Agra explains is called the Great Conjunction, which that's part of the prophecy that the wisest of the mystics had told Jin about before he passed away. And of course there's a pouch full of crystal shards. So what Agra did is that she pours all of them out in front of Jin. But now here comes a problem. Which one was it? So Jin does what he knows best. He plays the panpipe that tells him which one it was. It's the one in the middle. And it's indeed the missing shard of the dark crystal that he was supposed to get. So Jin now knows what to do. He'll take the missing shard to the castle, but before that could happen, the Garthim that was sent by the new emperor was sent there to capture Jin, but instead they catch Agra by mistake. And before that, Jin manages to escape, but during the attack, the Garthim had burnt down Agra's house. The next morning back at the Valley of the Stones, it's now the Mystics' time to leave, so they're heading to the exact same castle as Jin did. So meanwhile back with Jin, after he made his escape the previous night, he's now in a forest swamp. And as he's sitting there looking at the crystal shard, wondering what he's going to do with it by the time he arrived at the castle, that was until something came out from the hole and scared Jin that caused him to fall in the swamp's water. And then before you know it, a stranger comes to save him. Her name is Kira, and that's her pet monster dog, Fizzgig. Of course, even better, Kira can talk to animals. That's part of her gift. So, she not only caused the creature to lift Jin out the water, and that's when Jin got off the creature. So, Kira said to Jin after introducing herself to him and he introduces himself back that there's a place that they can spend the night. Meanwhile, back at the castle, it's dinner time, and all the guests are having a meal. That was until when the Garthan comes back with a captured Agra. That's when Agra pleaded her case to reprimand them for what they did to her and burnt down her house. Plus, on top of that, Agra told the guests that they could have saved themselves the trouble by asking her instead of doing it. So, what the guests did was to send the crystal bats out to find Kira and Jin. So back with Jin and Kira now on a boat on their way to the Podling village where Kira comes from. But little didn't they know there's a crystal bat that's flying above them. But luckily for Kira, she took care of that crystal bat, literally. So now the Gelflings had arrived at the Podling village. So back with Jin and Kira that had finally arrived at the Podling village, Jin was introduced to the Podlings from Kira. And they had a very good time. They were eating, dancing, there was music playing, but then the garden started to crash the party literally and captured all the Podlings. But luckily for Jin and Kira, they managed to escape. So back with Jin and Kira who made their escape, that's when the Garthan went to pursue them. But then out of nowhere, a Skeksis just came up from out of nowhere to stop the Garthan. That gives the Gelflings a chance to get away. But they refused to make peace with him, and so they left. After that, Jin had pleaded his case to say that he wished he never found that shard to begin with because it was nothing but trouble, and so he threw it away. Luckily for Kira, she manages to treat the wound on Jin's arm, so the Gelflings rested for the night. So the next morning after the Gelflings woke up, Jin was happy to see that the good news is that his arm's all better thanks to Kira who treated it, and then he found the shard once again and then picks it up. And then he saw an old temple up ahead that once belonged to the Gelflings, and there's some hieroglyphs on the wall. And then Jin reads it and tells them what it means. Luckily for Jin's master, before he passed away, he taught him how to read hieroglyphic writing. It says, quote, "When single shines the single sun, what was shunned and undone, the two made one, by Gelfling hand or else by none." That's the same prophecy that Jin's master had been talking to him about before he passed away. So now that Jin knows what the shard was for, so now all he has to do is get to the castle, and along with Kira. But before they could head off, they bumped into the same Chamberlain's guests as they did the night before. Now, remember, he was the one that saved their lives, but once again, just like what the Gelflings did the night before, they refused to make peace with him. So back with Kira and Jin, after they managed to get away, Kira knows what to do. She calls for the Landstriders to give them the lift to the castle, so off they went. Meanwhile, back in the castle, but this time in the laboratory, inside were all the caged animals and the imprisoned podlings, and let's not forget Agra, she's a prisoner there too. So what the Skeksis scientist did is that he grasped the podlings and locked them up so that they wouldn't move anywhere. And what he also did is that with the dark crystal, it drains the podlings' essence so it could be fed to the general, which is now the new emperor, of course. But then the new emperor got upset with the Skeksis scientists because the podling incense didn't last very long. So all they need now is a Gelfling. So speaking of the Gelflings, back with Jin and Kira, they're still on their way to the castle. But the Gelflings are not the only ones that arrived at the castle, because the Gelfling that had the captured podlings from the village, they arrived there too. So back with Jen and Kara on the Landstriders, after they saw what had happened, that's when they knew that there was no time to lose. So while Jen and Kara are busy freeing the podlings, as for the Landstriders, they attacked the Garvin the best way they knew how. But unfortunately, they were both killed in the process. But when the Gelflings knew that they had no place else to go, so Kira had a plan. She grabs Jin, jumps off the cliff, and by surprise she has wings. Of course, she later told that to Jin, and that's because she's a girl Gelfling, and girls have wings. And in Jin's case, he's a boy Gelfling, so that means he didn't have any wings. So since getting into the front of the castle for the Gelflings didn't work, so they tried Plan B to find another way in. But unfortunately for Jin and Kira on the way in, that's when the Skeksis Chamberlain comes out of nowhere, captures Kira, and keeps in Jin. Luckily Fizzgig will be alright. So back with the Skeksis Chamberlain and the captured Kira, the Skeksis screamed in horror when they saw her, so they ran to the throne room. So meanwhile in the throne room, while the two Skeksis told the Emperor this news, that's when the Chamberlain arrived with the captured Kira to show her to the Emperor. The Emperor was very delighted to see Kira, and he told the Chamberlain that she'll be useful later. So in the meantime, Kira was taken to the laboratory. In the meantime, the Skeksis Chamberlain was reinstated. Back with Jin, who was buried under the rocks earlier, he was saved by Fizzgig. Back with Kira, still in the castle's laboratory, she was about to get her incense drained, just like what the podlings did by the Skeksis scientist that was there. Remember, Agra was also there, and then she told Kira to speak to the animals in the lab to set themselves free to attack the Skeksis scientists. And so that's what Kira did. Next thing you know, all the animals that were inside of the cages broke themselves free and attacked the scientists. Until finally at last the Skeksis scientists fell into the pit. So, unfortunately, on the way to the castle, one of the mystics disappeared. So now there are 8. Back in the castle's laboratory, Kira is set free thanks to the animals who helped her earlier. So now time is running out. So all Kira has to do is to meet with Jin in the crystal chamber. So meanwhile, the 3 sons were about to meet at any time. Back inside the castle and with Jin, he's now heading to the same crystal chamber as Kira did. Long story short, back with the mystics who had just left the Valley of the Stones earlier, they had arrived at the castle. So back with Jin, long story short, good news, he made it to the castle's lab, only to find that it's a mess and Agra has already been set free. But she tells Jin that there's no time to lose, and that Kira's already headed her way to the crystal chamber, so he heads off. Back outside the castle, the guardian has allowed the mystics to pass inside the castle, after they hummed, of course. Back with Jin, he finally arrived at the crystal chamber, but he's not alone, because let's not forget Kira, who was set free earlier from the castle's lab, she heads there too. So long story short, after Kira had found a place to hide away from the Skeksis as they head towards the crystal chamber, when back with Jin, he found the dark crystal alright, that's the good news. And also the good news, he found a piece that was missing. And so now all he has to do is insert the shard before the 3 sons meet. But before he can proceed, he saw Skeksis coming inside the crystal chamber for a final ceremony. This time when the 3 sons meet, according to what the Emperor said to the Skeksis, they will live forever, or so they thought. When the Skeksis had catched Jin in the act, but they also caught Kira too, and that's when the Skeksis had called for the Garvin to capture them. So what Jin did is that he jumped on top of the crystal, but he accidentally dropped the shard. Luckily for Kira, she grabs it right before the Skeksis did. So back with Kira, who has the crystal shard, the Skeksis tries to get it away from her. So what she did is that she tries to toss it up to Jin. So while doing that, that's when Kira gets stabbed in the back. Luckily for Jin, he catches the shard when he did. So Jin did what he needed to do. He inserted the missing shard inside the dark crystal, and when it happened, well, luckily for the Mystics, they're inside the castle, so now they're headed towards the crystal chamber. And also, as it happens, the garden fell apart, and as for the sketches, they were busy running around, and they knew that there was nothing they could do. So, as the castle started to fall apart, next thing you know, both the Mystics and the sketches combined into one, just like what the prophecy said. Back with Agra, long story short, the good news for her is that she saved Fizzgig on her way to the crystal chamber, and by the time she arrived, she knew that what the prophecy said was true, and she was there to witness it. Back in the crystal chamber, the Ursics, that are now the new species since they were combined from the Mystics and the Skeksis, thanks to Jin, they made an omission by confession that 1,000 years ago they were shunned because they had accidentally broke the crystal 1,000 years ago. So now that the prophecy has been fulfilled, what they did next is to tell Jin that it was thanks to his courage and Kira's sacrifice they made it all possible. Plus, Jin was told by the Ursics before they left was to have Jin embrace Kira, and she was brought to life. And so, as the film comes to an end, both of the Gelflings are very happy now that they have fulfilled their prophecy, and because, thanks to them, the planet has now been restored.